And so, the good thing about me is, I promise a lot. I'm bold, but I over deliver on what I promise. And so you don't have to worry about that. One of the ways we've led as well is on the issue of education. And our view in Florida, and I think it's shared by the vast, vast majority of the people in Florida, and certainly the overwhelming majority of families in Florida, is that the purpose of our school system is to educate kids, not to indoctrinate kids. And that means that parents have a fundamental role in the education and upbringing of their kids. Schools are important, whether it's your school district, a charter school, private school, all that stuff is very important, but they do not supersede the rights of parents. They're there to support the community and the kids and the parents, not to overwhelm parents' judgments. And so that's how it's going to be in Florida. And of course, that means they cannot force you as a parent to subject your kid to COVID shots if that's not what you want. You're not going to let that happen. And fortunately for you, see, I'm always one step ahead of this stuff. We banned that last year. We banned the COVID jabs for kids. Like, you can't mandate it, that the parents can make those decisions. Now, in Florida, under our Surgeon General, who's a great guy, Joseph Ladapo, we recommend in Florida that parents do not give mRNA shots to healthy kids. But you know what? It's a free country, and if you want to do something differently, but we are not going to allow any school or school district to say your kid doesn't get an education unless they get the latest COVID booster shot. Not going to happen. We also understand that we want our schools to be focused on, traditional educational topics. We do not support things, and indeed have banned concepts in our K through 12 schools like critical race theory. We're not teaching kids to hate our country, to hate each other. We're not teaching kids that America's stolen land. We're not teaching kids that, the Boston Tea Party was about preserving slavery. That is not true, and it's not something that we're going to have in our schools. What we are going to do is we're going to make sure to teach our kids about the Constitution, about the Bill of Rights, about the Declaration of Independence and us being endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. And because I signed legislation this year, we are also going to be able to teach the students what it means to be an American, but then how that's different from some other systems that we've had to contend with. And so because of the legislation I signed, every November 7th will be a day for our kids to learn in school, as well as the broader community to reflect upon the victims of communist regimes throughout history and the evils of communist tyranny. 100 million people killed by Marxist-Leninist regimes from the 20th century onward. And as much as we think the Berlin Wall came down, all this, this stuff just doesn't die. We see it in the Western Hemisphere. We see it in other parts. And so we've got to be honest about this. They'll go to some of these universities across the country and they'll teach the kids that somehow communism works and all this stuff. It's crazy what they will say. So we need to teach the truth. We need to be honest about the death toll and about the misery that those regimes have inflicted on humans throughout the last 120 years. So we're doing that in Florida. We're going to keep doing that. We also, I am a father of a 5, a 4, and a 2-year-old, and my wife and I just want our kids to be able to be kids. We want them to be able to go to school. We want them to be able to watch cartoons without there being some agenda shoved down their throat. And that means in Florida, parents can send their kids to elementary school without having instruction saying that their gender is a choice, or saying to a girl, you really may be a boy. That is unacceptable. That does go on in other parts of the country. In fact, they just had parents in Dearborn, Michigan. These are Muslim American parents that are upset about some of this stuff going into their kids' schools. And so this is something that I think parents regardless of your background, regardless of your political leanings, just understand we need to be focusing on teaching these kids to read, to write, to add, subtract, science, all the basic stuff. Do not get things like sexual politics into our elementary schools. And we took action that wouldn't happen. And when they did the bill, the bill was being done in the legislature. The left starts attacking it. Of course, the media generally just echoes what the left says because they're basically an arm of the political left and have been for some time at this point. So they're creating narratives, doing all this stuff. And I'm just looking at it, and it's like I'm not involved in like every piece of legislation. So I look at it, I ask myself, well, what's the deal? Why are they saying all this? And I read it, and I'm like, you can't do gender ideology and sexuality in elementary school. I'm like, that's the hill they're dying on? Really? I mean, like, honestly, why would you want to be discussing these things with these little kids? It is not appropriate. I mean, there's some serious problems there. So I was like, yeah, this is obviously something that makes sense. I didn't think it was necessarily going on in Florida, although they did show me some books that were concerning, and I definitely saw it going on in some other places around the country. So I'm like, yeah, this is something to support. And they were trying to pressure corporations to get involved and to oppose the law. And so they got Disney to come out and attack parents' rights in education. And I'm just like, it's free to say what you want, but coming out against it, saying, demagoguing the bill, that's not going to cow me into not supporting it. I'm going to do what's right for the people of Florida. I don't take marching orders from woke corporations based in California. Just not how I roll. So we signed the bill, and after we signed the bill, Disney said that it's their mission to repeal parents' rights and to litigate against it and all this other stuff. And I'm just thinking to myself, it's like these are parents that are just concerned about their kids going to school and not having a lot of this other stuff injected in. It's not good for the kids. You're free to take that position, although I think it's a weird position when you're a family company with caters to families with young kids. But I think we've seen there is an agenda at foot, unfortunately. They want to get it into programming, and they want to do this, and I just think that that's wrong, and it's sad. And, my wife and I, we got to be careful about what's on some of these programs. And, I kind of felt like when I was growing up it was a little bit better, but it is what it is. So they're free to take these positions, but they are not free to force us to subsidize their activism. And they've been getting massive subsidies from Florida since before I was born. And they have their own government that they control in Central Florida for decades. There's no other company that has that, probably anywhere in the country, but certainly not in our state. They get exemptions from laws that all their competitors have to follow, and they get really massive tax breaks. And so what we said was, working with the legislature, okay, if that's the road you're going on, we don't feel comfortable elevating you and putting you on a pedestal in the state of Florida, because those values aren't our values. So we took action, and because we did, Disney is no longer going to have its own government. They are going to live under the same laws as everybody else, and they are going to pay their fair share of taxes in the state of Florida. But the reason you see things like these kerfluffles, is because of something that is effectively a woke mind virus that's getting involved into all these institutions. It's a way of thinking that is detached from reality. It's resistant to evidence. It's more allowing ideology to trump reason and logic. And it's basically taken off in corporate America. You see a lot of these corporations doing this. It's taken off in our bureaucracy.